Hey guys, Grumpy Uncle Pat here. Uh, Somebody asked me about the martial arts stuff that I've done and my take on a couple different arts. One of my young friends is a real MMA guy, and he's really into Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu, and those are great. Those are great. When I got into martial arts, like I'm 50 now, I started. I guess my parents put me into Taekwondo when I was like 12, and only did that for a little bit, enough to learn some rudimentary like kickboxing basics, and then I ended up going into Western saber fencing, and I competed in that for until I was like 17. Went to Canada Games in '91 with it, a Western Canadian junior champ, and I guess I had lots of medals with that. I competed a lot, and after that, I got into Kung Fu. I did a little bit of Kung Fu there and Qigong meditation through my Sifu, which was kind of cool. He was a really he was a badass guy, and the older students in both fencing and in the Kung Fu group, they end up becoming like older mentors, and they kind of took me under their wing, and I looked up to them kind of like the big brothers I never had. When I got into the Filipino arts, they told me brother in the art, and I thought that was a very appropriate term. After I got out of that stuff, I got into drugs and alcohol pretty heavy. I floated around the bar scene for a while, and I got in fights, and I kind of played around with some of the stuff I was into, right? This one guy one time tried robbing me at knife point, and I had an extendable baton, so luckily that saber stuff came into play, where I was able to hit his wrist while he was coming at me with a knife. Like he's putting a knife in my face, and I just kept hitting him in the wrist, and eventually he just ran away. So that was a pretty applicable use of that art. After I kind of sobered up and I started getting my act together, I ran into a guy at a club, and he was a cop, a guy I went to high school with, and I'm like, "What have you been up to? You still doing that martial arts stuff?" And he's like, yeah, I do a stick and a knife program. If you're ever interested in coming down, you should come check it out. So I met up with them, and I started training under those guys for a couple of years in what was called Natural Spirit International for a while, and that's Kelly Warden's system. So I did that, and that was really cool because it was a lot like an Americanized Jeet Kune Do. As a matter of fact, it was like Renegade Jeet Kune Do. You take what you've done before, you kind of incorporate it into your own program, and you develop your expression of the art. And so I did that for a couple of years until I started realizing that I'd actually been doing a lot of Filipino martial arts. I thought it was like an American stick and knife system, but it was a Filipino martial art. So I met a Filipino family, and I studied with them as well as the NSI and the Renegade Jeet Kune Do for another couple of years. I was about 4 years in NSI and about 2 years in Pakiti, and Pakiti Turshaw Kali is what it was called. And then I got my Lankaneisen, which is like a first degree in Pakiti Turshaw Kali. Politics happen, that's what happens in a lot of different martial arts. Different dojos have problems with each other, different styles have different problems with each other. And so I ended up leaving both of those arts. And then I got into Kali Illustrismo. I met Norman Suanco, Maestro Norman, and Master Sonny Padilla from Red Deer Cali. So I would go and I would train with them and do seminar kind of stuff, and just pass progressive levels because I'd had all this previous experience. So they tested me, and I went through a testing process, and I got my Tagabag Turo Guru in Kali Illustrismo through Red Deer Cali, with the obligation to continue my education and to continue the spiritual development, which is part of martial arts. Now, one of the reasons I was really into martial arts was because I had no shortage of interactions with predatory elements growing up. And I felt the need to self-protect. And you know what? As I got older and I started realizing how many of my life behaviors were based on self-protection, this makes total sense. So I got really into martial arts because I didn't want anybody to fucking fuck with me no more. I didn't want anybody to come at me and try to victimize me or punk me, or even you can bully me. I didn't want anybody to bully me. And so training in self-defense, which is what martial arts was to me, made sense. And I did it for a very long time until I felt pretty confident to take care of myself. That being said, when I was messed up, I made some mistakes, and there's been a couple of episodes where I've done accidents or I've hurt people, and there's nothing but regret about that. So I'm very careful on what I advocate for. So I did train or teach in an MMA gym for about a decade. And when I got there, coming from a traditional martial arts background, it was a weird element where the new MMA environment was a lot of guys that really wanted to be the alpha tough guy. They wanted to be the toughest guy in the dojo. They weren't necessarily there because they wanted to keep themselves safe or their family safe or their community a safe area. They wanted almost to be the predator, the alpha predator. So I had some ethical issues with a lot of the people in the MMA environment that ended up being criminals, but they just wanted to be tough criminals. So that's a little bit of differentiation between, I guess, the traditional martial arts and the modern martial arts or mixed martial arts, where once upon a time, the guys that were predators that victimized the little people, so the little people learn martial arts, these predators are now the guys going and learning to be better predators. So it's kind of a dangerous one. In traditional like Chinese or maybe even, Japanese so-so, traditional Chinese martial arts, there was almost an obligation to be a Buddhist before you got into it. And in, Pencak Silat in Indonesia, they expect you to be a devout, like practicing Muslim before they start teaching you how to hurt people, because there's a moral prerequisite to some of this knowledge. They don't want to cast pearls before swine, so to speak. No unearned knowledge to the uninitiated. So my theory on martial arts or tactical training or anything like that is that there needs to be a moral prerequisite to getting into it. And some gyms will really oust the people that don't belong there, and I have nothing but respect for them. But some gyms, they really advocate for some of the worst people to come in there and train and to be learning some pretty harsh stuff. Like, I personally don't think that the local bully or predator should know how to break your bones at the drop of a hat. You watch the old kung fu movies, those are all the bad guys. The bad guys that are kung fu trained really need the good guy who's kung fu trained to come in and kind of stop people. And a lot of these people that say violence is bad, violence is horrible, you shouldn't know how to do it, it should be reserved for authority. Well, they're the first people that would get injured if we removed it from the moral people. If you remove the ability to defend yourself from your family, from the individual, from the community, and you only entrust it to some people, well, okay, you better trust those people to be ethical in their use of force, right? But when you stop trusting them and you say they can't use force anymore, but the criminals increasingly feel they can use force, you end up moving into chaos. You've disarmed everybody. Chaos rules. So yeah, I'm down with whatever martial art you teach as long as you've got a moral angle to it. And I wish people would take care of themselves, and I wish people would think ahead in why they're getting into stuff and what the end goal is, right? Because if you're doing it for toxic reasons, it's going to bite you in the ass. You might want to be the toughest guy in the room, but you make a mistake, you're going to be just another guy trying to be tough in a big box full of predators, right? And nobody wants to be there. All right, love you guys. Wish you all longevity, health, balance, peace, love, and granola.